Here in California, we're more than a month on lockdown, shelter in place, I should say. So it's a very challenging time for every one of us for so many reasons. So today, neuropsychologist and Sunday Assembly board member Lynn Warner PhD will speak on how we can cope in this difficult time. Dr. Warner earned her degree from the University of Kentucky and was an assistant professor at the Eastern Virginia Medical School and is now in private practice here in San Diego. Lynn, thank you so much for doing this.
All right, Stephen, thank you for that introduction. I am very new at trying to talk to a computer as a presentation. I wish I was seeing you live where I could look directly at you and get some feedback, but I'm going to do my best to make this interesting. This is kind of a serious assembly because of the circumstances we find ourselves in. Just want to let those of you who are new to Sunday Assembly know that sometimes our topics are very light and not quite so serious. At any rate, I'm going to be talking to you about coping with COVID-19, or a subtitle might be, How to Manage Our Emotions in an Incredibly Emotionally Stressful Time. I have two questions that I'm going to try to answer for you in the next 15 to 20 minutes. The first question is, why is coping with the COVID-19 pandemic so hard? The second question is, how can I feel better in the midst of this pandemic or in spite of this pandemic? Just hearing some answers to these two questions and thinking about them later may prove helpful. I hope so. So why is it that coping with this pandemic is so hard? Everybody listening today already knows that for human beings, change, loss of control, and uncertainty are all extremely stressful. We like things that have patterns and regularity and rhythm. We like to be in control of ourselves and what's happening around us, and we like to know what the future holds. All of those things are not happening right now, and that stress affects us physically, emotionally, and cognitively. And we're all familiar with those effects, things like physical tension, disruption of sleep, digestive problems, heightened fearfulness, feelings of helplessness and loss of control, feelings of sadness and discouragement, decreased clarity of thinking, and fatigue. But for some, clinical levels of anxiety and depression may occur. So those are just a few of the effects that stress has on us. But there are at least 5 reasons that the COVID-19 pandemic feels so overwhelming to almost all people. First, we're dealing with more than one major life-altering crisis right now. There are at least 4 crises that are happening simultaneously. The first one has to do with health. Everyone is struggling with the fact that there is this virus rampant in the world that's making millions of people sick and will be taking the lives of many. So we have a health crisis that's occurring. And right now, we don't know how long that's going to last or when there will be effective treatments or vaccines. The second crisis we're dealing with is a healthcare crisis, at least in this country and also in many other countries around the world. That creates a lot of anxiety and concern and grief because our healthcare workers don't have the protective equipment they need. They don't have the machines and supplies and medications that would most effectively treat people. And people are worrying about what the cost to them is going to be because healthcare in this country is so expensive. So we have a health crisis, we have a healthcare crisis. We also are in the midst of one of the biggest economic crises this country has ever known. People have lost jobs, businesses have closed, supply chains are not always working well, and all of our governments have lost tax revenues, creating an immense amount of stress economically for individuals, but also for us as a community. And fourthly, here in the United States, we're experiencing a crisis with our government. We have a government, particularly at the federal level, that has really struggled to provide us with reliable information and ramp up care for the citizens and we struggle with the implications of all that and all the implications for our democratic process, including how the upcoming general election will be held. So we really are dealing simultaneously with 4 separate crises, any one of which would be enough to create significant amounts of stress. But these are all happening at the same time. A second thing that makes this feel so overwhelming is that we lack control over the changes that have been happening. And this sense of having no control over what's going on in our lives is tremendously stressful. Uncertainty is absolutely everywhere. We just don't know what's going to be happening with our jobs, with our health, with our economy, with our lives. In addition, we've lost the routines and structures that normally we rely upon to help us get through the day or the week. In essence, we're grieving multiple losses. So all of us are feeling losses. We have a lost sense of normalcy. We've lost our routines. Some of us have lost our jobs or seen our jobs change in ways that feel extremely uncomfortable for us. For some people, their sense of themselves or their self-identity is affected by such things as job loss and some of the other changes. We have people that are losing loved ones, and even if we haven't lost a direct close friend or family member, we're all grieving the loss of so many people, some of them famous, some of them not. So we have that kind of grief going on. There's been a loss of financial security for many. We're grieving our lost freedoms. We miss not being able to just spur of the moment decide what we do and where we want to go and who we want to be with. We've lost our physical connections to other people. Except for the people that are staying with us in our homes, we no longer are rubbing shoulders or elbows or giving hugs or just being physically close to one another. Access to some of our favorite places and activities is no longer available to us. We miss those things. And we've lost trust in our federal government, and we have questions about the whole working of our democracy at this point. All of these losses equate to a profound sense of grief. For some people, there are 2 additional reasons that this current pandemic and the crises it entails are so overwhelming. For some people, it's triggering old traumas. It's reopening psychological wounds that maybe hadn't healed completely. And it's exacerbating pre-existing emotional or mental health problems. And I think we're all aware of all of these effects going on around us. So collectively, we're in a state of deep grief. So, second question for my talk, how can I feel better in the midst of these current crises? Or even, should I feel better? I think the answer to should I feel better is it's okay to feel better. It's also okay just to feel all of the other things that you're feeling. But if you want to try to feel a little better in the midst of all this crisis, I have some ideas for you. One thing to know is that the things I'm about to talk about, some of them may work for you and some of them may not. Everybody has to figure out what works for them. And one of the basic things we need to try to keep in mind is that everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they have. So we need to be slow to judge either ourselves or others in terms of how well they're coping with all this. But here are some ideas or tools that you can experiment with to see what might work for you. The most obvious is that it's important to take care of your basic needs. Try to have plenty of healthy food, drink plenty of water, get some regular exercise, and try to maintain good sleep hygiene, which essentially means going to bed and getting up the next day at the same time day to day. Secondly, focus on the choices that you can make day to day. When you're feeling helpless or like you've lost control in a situation, it can be very easy to fall into thinking mainly about all those losses and what you can't do, what you can't control, what you're not allowed to do. But it'll actually be helpful to your mental health if you focus instead on the choices that remain available to you. So focus on what you can do, and that will increase your sense of self-empowerment, which is a great antidote to feeling helpless or powerless. A third idea is to create new routines. These may be daily routines, weekly routines, or even monthly routines. In creating your new routines, be sure that they're based in your own personal value system. Identify what you value most, and then be sure that some of your time is spent engaging in activities that are consistent with those values. As part of your routine creation, and as part of good self-care, you might consider scheduling time for grapes. And by grapes, I don't mean time to eat them, although that's okay too. But grapes is an acronym that stands for G, gentle, R, relaxation, A, accomplishment, P, pleasure, E, exercise, and S, social. So you want to schedule time for all those grapes. Schedule time where you're just going to be gentle with yourself. Schedule time for relaxation. Schedule time for accomplishing things, even just little things. Schedule time for pleasure. Schedule time for exercise, and schedule time to be socially interactive. Returning to the idea about being gentle with yourself, that might be a foreign concept, but in this time of excessive stress, it's important to be gentle with yourself and with others. What this means is you should try to avoid thoughts or statements that contain the words should or should not. Rather than those kinds of words, think in terms of preferences. I would like to be doing a little better than I am, rather than I should be doing better. Or I would prefer if my significant other was a little more patient, rather than they should be more patient. Secondly, do things that are pleasant or soothing. Science has showed us that just feeling warmth can feel a lot like the security and comfort of being with a loved one. So do things that provide you with a sense of warmth. Cover up in a blanket. Have a hot shower. Well, I think have a cup of hot tea and take a hot shower makes more sense. Or if you're already hot, take a cool shower. But do things that are cozy, soothing, and pleasant. Say nice things to yourself about yourself. Offer yourself encouragement, congratulations, love, and appreciation. Offer yourself comforting touches. Hug someone or something in your house. Hug yourself. That's actually possible. You can just take your arms and wrap them around yourself. Place your hand over your heart. All of these types of touch are comforting. And if you set goals for yourself, make them small and easily attainable. Give yourself opportunities for success. That's what it means to be gentle with yourself. And you can extend those same things to other people. Next, pay attention to your thought patterns and the specific words you speak to yourself and others. Try to identify any irrational thoughts you have and replace them with ones that are more rational. And when I talk about rational thoughts, I'm talking about thoughts that are logical, fact-based, and helpful. So if you're having thoughts that are not based in facts, maybe they're based in guesses or assumptions or worst-case scenarios, you need to shift those thoughts to things that are more fact-based. If you're having thoughts that bring you down, defeat you, discourage you, you need to shift those thoughts to things that are more helpful. For example, instead of saying, I have to do this, I have to wear this mask when I leave, you might change your thoughts, change the words to say, I choose to wear this mask when I leave because By doing that, I'm keeping other people safe in case I have the virus, and it's also perhaps helping me stay safer. So I choose to wear this mask when I leave. Instead of saying, I cannot handle this, or this is just driving me absolutely crazy, say instead something like, right now I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed, but I know I'll get through this. I've gotten through major stresses before. I'll get through this. Think, I can learn new ways to manage my emotions. I can learn new coping strategies and tools if I want to. And think, I can seek help from others, including support groups or professionals, if I want to. I have choices and I can manage, and my positive thoughts will be helpful. Another tool is to practice deep breathing and sensory grounding techniques, and do this several times a day. I think probably everybody listening knows what it means to do deep breathing, but if you've never done it, you can practice it right now. What you do is breathe from your diaphragm, take a deep breath slowly, feel your lungs filling up with air, and then slowly release that air and feel it leaving your lungs. That's all that deep breathing is. You can do that for a minute or 2 minutes or however long you want. It will bring your blood pressure down. It will bring a shift in the emotions that you're feeling. It's just a way to take a pause. Sensory grounding is equally easy. I'm just going to give you one example of this, but there's a whole worksheet that I wrote up that's going to be posted to our website that you can check out later. But one example of sensory grounding would be right now, the next 10 seconds, just look around you and either say out loud or say to yourself all the things that you can see. Go ahead, give it a try. Okay, for those of you who may never have done these things, you've just learned 2 emotion regulation tools. You now know how to do deep breathing and you know how to do sensory grounding. And both of those exercises, as simple as they sound, are great ways to change the tension in your body and to reduce emotional intensity if your emotions are feeling overwhelming or you just like to bring the intensity down a bit. Another tool that could be useful or another idea for coping that may be helpful is to find purpose, perhaps by focusing on helping others. Even though we may have to stay at home, we can all practice remote acts of kindness. And just engaging in those sorts of activities will be comforting to us. Find a creative outlet that might be in writing or art or music or building something, crafting, gardening, anything that allows you to see something new emerge because of your efforts. Journal about your experiences. We know that writing is a very therapeutic modality for helping us cope with stresses. And finally, the last thing I'm going to suggest is something that I think everybody's probably aware of, and that is avoid information or news overload. You can control how often you listen to the news, what your news source is. You can control how much time you spend on social media and what kinds of posts you see there. Take control of those things and use them to the extent that they're helpful to you. If you would like any handouts that summarize some of the ideas presented above, they will be available through links on the SundayAssemblySanDiego.com website. Remember, everybody, be gentle with yourself. Thanks.